welcome to Connected Conversations for Creatives, a place where creatives like you can learn, grow, and connect. I'm your host, Jennifer Carr. Throughout history, creatives have ranged from the meticulously organized, such as famous filmmaker Stanley Kubrick, who is known for his films The Shining and 2001: A Space Odyssey, to the wildly disheveled, like the notoriously chaotic physicist Albert Einstein, who is credited with saying, "If a cluttered desk is a sign of a cluttered mind, of what then is an empty desk a sign?" Well, consider this. When you're looking for that one sketch or note you made weeks ago, how often do you find yourself having to sift through piles of papers or scrolling endlessly through your digital files? How does this search impact your creative momentum and your mental clarity? Now, there's a growing conversation around decluttering, and not just a means of organizing your physical space, but this transformative practice to enhance your creative potential. It challenges the stereotype that creatives thrive in chaos. In fact, streamlining your environment might be exactly what you need to streamline your thoughts and refine your art. I mean, really, does the state of our physical and digital workspaces influence our creative process? Can a cluttered desk really be the sign of a cluttered mind, or is it the mark of a genius at work? Well, the truth is, the pursuit of reducing friction in your environment will help maximize your creative output. The key to unlocking your next big idea lies not only in your talent and skill, but also how you organize the world around you. But for some of us, I think it's a little overwhelming. So to help us better understand and walk us through these muddled and haphazard spaces is Julie Caraccio, an expert in decluttering and a prolific author who has self-published 15 books on how to organize your life creatively. Julie also hosts her own podcast where she shares invaluable tips on decluttering and then repurposes her content in super innovative ways. Julie is currently developing and designing products to help people declutter, proving that organization and creativity are not just complementary, they're interconnected. So today, I'm hoping she's going to share with us why she believes a well-organized space can foster rather than hinder creativity, and then offer some practical advice on achieving that sweet spot between order and creativity. So, Julie, welcome to the show. Help us uncover these secrets, because all of us want to be our best selves, and I think you're the person to get us there.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I'm chuckling. I'm so glad that you brought up Einstein, because whenever I talk to creative people, that's what they always put back in my face. And they say, well, he was a genius. Mm-hmm. And I always respond with, he could have done more. And I truly believe that, because the inner clutter affects the outer clutter and vice versa. So that clutter on your desk can prevent you from writing the next great American novel. It can prevent you from doing that painting that you've always desired, right? It's kind of like that drip, drip, drip at the back of your head, right? And if people see a cluttered desk, they immediately think that you get passed over for promotion. They doubt your ability. So, I mean, if you're in a creative environment and you're like, you know what, I want to move up, say you're, I don't know, designing for Apple or something, and you have that cluttered desk, people are going to think you're not as smart as you are. So I'm going to share right off the bat one of my favorite tips for creatives. You know how you are in, or if you've been in an office and they have those cubbies. So like the secretary would put in, like, to sort your mail, sort my mail. I love smaller versions of those, because people who are creative tend to have like maybe scraps and pieces of things. Oh, I have this idea for a project. So that is a really great way for you to keep all those bits and bobs together and organize it in a way that's easy to find. The other thing I like is, if you're like me and always having ideas, or I'm like, I have to come up with this product, is I have a little notebook. I like Clever Fox personally, and I keep it, so all my ideas are in one notebook. Oh, I want to do this for a product. I have a little notebook for meetings, so I have everything that I can easily access. So those are two ways that aren't a super burden, that you can easily clear up your space, but not feel, because I'm not Martha Stewart, right? And I will say that I'm like, Martha's not realistic. I'm surprised, honestly, that she hasn't come after me, because I tell people, she has a ton of assistants. She never sleeps. That's not the life for me, right? So if you're like, think that it's, and I would also add that I believe there's this false perception among many creatives. Like you said, like, well, Einstein, he was awesome, so why can't I do that? So I'm just encourage people to think about that and perhaps be open to different perspectives on whether or not that's true.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there are so many, like, I have so many questions just floating through my head because I'm an organized person. I am like that is something that I thrive on. However, I did not marry somebody who was also an organized person. And so
Hmm.
after 20 years, it's like you throw a glove in the mud and the mud doesn't get glovy. Yeah, I definitely picked up some of his. I had to put up with the clutter, and therefore I'm like, I make do with clutter in certain aspects of my life because it's just easier than having to
Hmm.
constantly be frustrated with it. And so I've kind of let, in some cases, that spill over into my office area and into, like, if you could see on either side of me right now, I have organized piles of chaos because that's where I am. And so I've just got so many thoughts and questions running through my head. But before we jump into that, tell us how you got on this journey to decluttering. Like, what did that look like for you?
Well, so I had been a director of development, working, writing grants and raising money for nonprofit. And woke up one day, I was living in Los Angeles and woke up and heard move to Raleigh. I'm like, okay, maybe I should find out where Raleigh is because I don't have any idea. Oh, North Carolina. Okay. And when my intuition's that strong, I've learned you listen. So
Mhm.
it took me about a year to get it together and move. But then I had a job and then the company went under. And then I had a job with a nonprofit, which was the craziest job I'd ever had in my life. I'm like, these people are nuts. Life is too short for this. I said, so what can I do, right? I need to make money. I'm single, but I want to make a difference. And, what can I come up with that's creative? And then I have to enjoy doing, right? So I was like, I'm going to do organization. And my business name at the time was Healing Through Organization, and never change your business name. I did that. And boy, was it a pain in the bum. And
Yeah.
then, so it was because I was like, I help people heal when they organize. And then I had this client. And so, in the meantime, I am doing a body, mind, spirit internet TV show. I'd go to someone's house. I interviewed all these body, mind, spirit experts, which was great because they'd say, here, read my book, or let's practice on you. So it was all this personal growth stuff, really wonderful. And I was with a client. And typically, when decluttering and organizing, I work in 4-hour chunks because you can see that there's progress.
Mhm.
And she said, can we just talk? And I was like, you're the client. We can do whatever you want. And we ended up talking for 3 of those hours. And that last hour, the amount of decluttering and organizing was phenomenal. And I was like, aha, it's more about the decluttering. And then I was like, you need to go get certified for a life coach because you need to have more experience with this. And so what it taught me, it was digging deeper. And I always say to people, be like an archaeologist, right? What can you discover with no judgment? Just
Mhm.
because we can go down that rabbit hole of judgment. But that was the aha moment for me. I'm like, I want to concentrate on decluttering. And because of my work and personal growth, I was like, I have to look at holistically. And so for me, clutter is anything that prevents you from creating the life you choose,
Mm.
deserve, and desire. And I'm very purposeful. Words have power. Words, we all know, have meaning. And, there's a different energy behind I want, gimme, 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 and
Mhm.
I choose. I'm going to declare, I'm going to
Mhm.
claim. And so I encourage people to look at the bigger picture of clutter.
I think that's a great place to start because it can get overwhelming. Sometimes as creatives, like, we always have something going on in our brain or multiple somethings going
Hmm.
on in our brain. But how do I start a story? I always start with, I know exactly in my mind how the story is going to start and how it's going to end. I have this big picture and I do have to break it down. So that's a logical plan for me to be able to see this big pile of stuff and be like, you don't belong. It's just like editing a book. You don't belong, and there's some commas needed over here, and that kind of thing.
No, that's great. And ironically enough, my biggest challenge with a book is organizing it
Mhm. Mhm.
and getting into that outline that makes sense.
What is this outline of which you speak? No, like, because some of us, I am the total opposite now. Like I said, I am an organized person. I have a calendar here in front of me on the wall. I have a planner here, and I have a dry erase calendar on the wall to that side. And they're all three different calendars, and they're all managing something different in my life. When it comes to writing a book, there is no outline. It plays in my head like a movie, and I start writing, and I'm like, ah. And so, yeah, sometimes I spend so much time in that little chaos that when I come out of it, uh, I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to focus on anything else. But I can also tell you that a decluttered space makes me feel really good. So how do we kind of work in that chaos of our mind to create a space that's going to allow us to stay up here longer?
I think that's a great question. So that works for you. And if you have the beginning and the ending and you figure it out in your process, that's a-okay. I think that's what's really important is we remember that everything is individualized.
Yes.
So everything's energy. And I would describe clutter as stuck, stagnant energy. So anything that you can do in your environment that helps keep it clean and clear is going to help you mentally, right? And so it's important, but also because everything's related. So let's talk about creatives. I bet everyone listening and watching has had someone be unsupportive. You can't make it as a writer. You suck. Oh, it's only your side gig, whatever. But that creates mental clutter, right? Because that can plant that seed of doubt. So, what is my relationship clutter? Because I'm going to let go of anyone who isn't supportive of my dream and my creative pursuit. My mom, I'll use as an example, all these paintings behind, my mother did. My mom did not start painting until she was in her 50s, and she discovered she had this huge talent. And so she would donate, to an auction, to charities she'd like, and they'd sell them. And we never got around to getting her website, but I'm like, these are great. And when she died, people were like, I'm like, people that cared were like, we want you to have a painting. And they meant so much to people. My mom was never famous, but that's not the point of it, right? I believe all of us have some sort of creative way about us. And so it's about bringing that and knowing it's not always about being famous or being able to make a living to that. So I just want people to celebrate wherever they are in their creative journey. But again, bringing it back to awareness. So let's talk about emotional clutter and creativity. Are you jealous, right? And sometimes, I'm really happy my friend, a little bit of me is jealous. Okay, well, let's examine that clutter. Is that saying that you need to sit down and write that novel because you're jealous of your friend? And that's a road path. That's a signal saying, hey, you want to write, you want to create.
I really like that. And I love that you break it into, we're going to declutter the different areas of your whole life because, creativity is a holistic situation. There's a physical component, there's a mental, emotional, spiritual component, like art encompasses all of those things. And when I have a bookshelf that is overcrowded. It is. And it's got double rows of books because I don't have room for another bookshelf. And then those books, I pull them out and I put them back and they might not be the same exact place, and it just gets to looking different, right? It looks unbalanced or whatever because I didn't take the time to put them exactly back. The dust line around them where I haven't dusted is different. Everything is just wrong. And so when I do put them in order, the spines are all lined up. There's no dust on the bookshelf and that kind of thing. Yeah, you take each individual piece of the story and you work with it and you don't do it all at once, right?
Yep.
Like you've got to take a first step. Where would you take the first step?
It's a great question. It really depends on where you are. So for instance, if you are not paying your mortgage on time, then I'm going to say, okay, we need to declutter and organize your office or wherever pay your bills. Or if you are fighting a lot with your spouse, right? Then maybe we need to get the bedroom all decluttered and organized. So we have that sacred space for the two of you. Or if you have a deadline, someone's coming in to put new kitchen cabinets in. Well, I think we need to start in the kitchen. Or something's just driving you crazy. That's where you start.
I like it. And you have to look past the surface level, right? You can't just be, oh, well, I'll take care of that. Or you can't put it off either. That is a huge thing that happens a lot because what happens when you put it off, the next thing gets cluttered and the next thing and the next thing, and you've got a pile up. And then all of a sudden your junk mail pile is 3 feet tall because you haven't dealt with it. Been there, done that recently. So yeah, I like that. You start somewhere, also prioritize, right? Like
absolutely.
Don't just try to be like, oh, well, I see this is a problem. Let's deal with it. Like prioritize what your biggest issue is. Yeah.
And I promise once you start decluttering and organizing, the easier it becomes. I mean, I've worked with people who their whole house, they haven't done anything in 20 or 30 years and are overwhelmed. That's the biggest thing I've seen with people. They're just so overwhelmed. Like, where do I start? And you know what? You just take that first step and you commit to it. You say, okay, I'm going to spend 5 or 10 minutes each day. If you can't do that through week, then you know what? You make it a priority on the weekend. Before I go out for my jog, I'm going to do a half an hour of decluttering.
Yeah. And you're not going to, and this is so hard, especially for those of us who might be a little neuroatypical and have a little ADHD, because that does
Yeah.
happen in creatives. Like, don't go from room to room to room.
Yes.
That is a habit that I have gotten myself into at times, and I'm not, fully ADHD. I have a little HD, but I don't have the whole four letters. But, there's just this tendency to, if you give a mouse a cookie, he's going to want, he's going to want, he's going to want, and he's going to move on and on and on, and nothing ever gets done.
Right, right. And so use a timer. If you're
Yeah.
someone who has that, say, I'm going to put the timer for 10 minutes, and then you stay and you don't move until that timer's done. And then, so like, I love breaking down everything. So I'm looking at my office as we talk. So what I would do, I still like to write things out. So I'd like, okay, I would have my bookcase, and then I have my built-ins, and then I have my little card deck kind of, what do you call it? Not an altar, but something like that. And then I have my closet. And so then I would break it down. Okay, 2 shelves, like the top shelves, middle shelves, bottom shelves, and, and desks, like things in the surface, things in the basket, closet, things that are hanging, and then tackle one little tiny project. But I don't move on until I've done the built-ins. And then when I do the built-ins, then it's okay. I can move on to the bookcase. And I love that you talked about that, because it's so true. Because when you do just a little and stop, and I've noticed a lot of times, not every time, but that's because of fear. And I get ADHD is a total other ball of wax, and I completely understand that might be going on. But for some of us, it's fear.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? What would happen if I would sell that novel and become successful? Would my marriage, how would that affect my marriage or my partnership? Right?
Mhm.
How would it affect with my friendships with other? Because there are people telling me, don't shine your light, stay small, right?
Oh, yes. Oh, fear is what drives your anxiety too. And if you notice that is one of the mental health and wellness, like the highest on the, you got anxiety and depression. Those two things are at the top of the list of the most impactful issues for creatives. And it's because fear drives anxiety. And what are we most afraid of? Putting ourselves out there, being a failure, somebody giving us a 1-star review. There's so many things that the person next to me is going to do better.
I got a 1-star review, and then I did a little podcast episode about it. And that was my biggest fear. Well, first of all, they just gave the 1-star. And I'm just going to keep it real. I have people that do what I do and like to bring it down. And so there's no mention if they purchased the book. There was no written whatever, and everything else has been really positive and 5 and 4-star reviews. And so I was like, you know what? It's a badge of honor. Yeah. Because I got my first star review, because if I didn't get a 1-star review, if it was a legit one, someone's not going to like me, and that's okay. Right. And you have to get over that hurdle. I mean, I'm on YouTube. People's like, I hate your voice. My favorite one was like, your voice is horrible. And so I wrote back, I said, isn't it great? We live in America. And they might've been, I think they were American. I said that you can choose who you listen to on YouTube, and you've got all these people to listen to. Right. I wasn't going to let your crappy comment bring me down. And like the same thing, I embraced it. Wow. And then after I got that 1-star review, I did 2 things. I went and looked at some of my favorite authors. I'm like, they've gotten 1-star reviews and they're phenomenal. Yeah. And then I went, and my favorite is Whitney Houston's Star Spangled Banner. I think she did. There's this one from the Olympics or something. To me, it was the best. And it's a very technically hard song to sing. And people were criticizing that. I'm like, if people can criticize Whitney, if people can criticize Bren Brown, I'm in good company. So I reminded myself that I'm not everything to everyone, and it's a badge of honor. And just prepare yourself. When you put yourself out there, people are going to criticize you.
Isn't that the truth? And you're not meant to connect with every person. That's why every relationship you have doesn't work out. That's why there are seasons, because they're not meant to last forever. Like, you cannot expectation for yourself. You cannot be all things to all people in that situation, because you would have to hit perfection. And I don't know about you, but I've yet to get close to that.
Nowhere near.
Yeah, mid grade, right? Like we're almost there, but no, you can't. And to even think that you could come close, I'm sorry. I'm going to laugh in your face, and then I'm going to say, bless your heart, and we're just going to move on. Like that's, right. Because I had the same experience. 5 stars, 4 stars, 2 stars. Like, no words, no review. They just said, here's 2 stars. Enjoy. And I'm like,
right. And they're keyboard warriors. And then what I always think is how sad. Like if you like in Goodreads, I just read a book the other day and I gave a 3-star, which is really low for me. But I was like, you know what? This and they've written a bunch of other books that are really great, but I'm like, it was obvious to me that they had an agenda and were trying to just appease every audience. And I'm like, you can't do that. And everyone was cheating on everyone. I'm like, no. For me, that doesn't work. And I was alone in that, but it was thoughtful. I wasn't like, she sucks or whatever. I said, I've read other books I've enjoyed and this just didn't work for me because it made me sad. Everyone was cheating. Like anyway, but that's different. And that's, to me, I always try to say something good. And it's a big difference in someone who's a keyboard warrior who is probably stifling their creativity and going to take it out on you or someone else.
Oh, sure. And I will also just say this for authors who are just starting out, who, you're looking for those 5 and 4-star reviews or even just ratings. You don't even want a review, you just want the stars. That's fine. But those are not really for you until they become a pattern. When you start seeing, continuous low ratings, then maybe check on your work. But for the most part, for me, when I read a review of somebody else's work, it's to know if it's somebody that I would want to continue reading. I read all of the spoilers. Like, I don't care. I will read every single spoiler somebody posts to see if I'm going to be interested in what happens next. And that way I can go into it without anxiety. But that's just the way I read it. But I think reviews are for other readers more than they are the authors,
Absolutely.
And, so don't base your whole success or failure on your stars and ratings. Like, that's not going to get you anywhere.
And you'll find your crowd.
Yes.
You'll find people who resonate with you and get your work.
Absolutely. And I'm glad we're talking about writing. So let's talk about your writing. You've written a lot of books based on your decluttering and all of that. So tell us about your books.
Sure. Well, the first one that I ever wrote was Clear Your Clutter Inside and Out, which I based on some podcast episodes. And so in this book, I really do a lot of whole hand holding, take action, really break it down. And we talk about physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and then I threw in a bonus energetic because I know that energetic clutter is a little weird for people. And then I did a whole series, and that's the bulk of the books on Got Clutter 365 journal prompts, because I believe you have the wisdom within. And so the whole basis for these journal prompts books is to ask you questions, to bring out that wisdom, and then I take you step by step. Okay, now that you've pulled out this information, how do we create a game plan for you to move forward? So it's like, in addition to the ones I just mentioned, I have holiday, financial, relationships, energetic, mental, spiritual, I'm trying to health, and so I wanted people to really, and then I have compilations if you want a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but I wanted people to really get and dial down in one subject. And then my last book is a jump start. If you're like, oh my gosh, Julie, I don't know where to start, I'm overwhelmed. It's 21 days. We have an awareness. Okay, what is my awareness? And then a take action. And you do that for 21 days in order to just build your confidence and get you moving forward.
I love that. Yeah, because some of us, we do like to take, again, it comes with getting overwhelmed. You have to have that one area. And so you can just go pick up the one that you're like, this is what I'm feeling the most. No, I love that. And I like that you repurposed your podcast material. Like, that's pretty genius. I think that's also a good way to declutter, because it's not just out there taking up space. It's being utilized over and over again, which is something. I had a conversation with another guest last season. She was all about repurposing everything. Like, it did not matter if it was a scrap of paper in your office, she was going to tell you to repurpose it. Now, I don't know if that goes along with decluttering. It might, but
yeah, with what more for organizing. Like, how can you use what you have around your home instead of going to the Container Store and buying something?
Yes. Oh my goodness. If you would just clear out those containers that you already have, you'll find there's so much space that you were wasting.
Yeah, that's true.
Ask me how I know. No, don't ask me. Please don't ask me. Now, with all of your books, you went self-publishing. Yes, you've self-published.
I did. And you know what? I'm going to keep it real. So I reached out to women. I went to an all-women's college, and I reached out to alums, crickets, which I'm going to be honest, really pissed me off, because I'm like, I would have rather, I went to a small college. You said this sucks. this idea sounds like the worst thing I've ever heard in humanity, but at least respond. So I was like, you know what? If I can't get someone to respond to me, from that as a connection.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to self-publish. But there were things, I did a little authors thing at the beginning of the year, and I was like, okay, you've done a lot correctly. And so the things that my grammar is atrocious. It sucks. And I had great teachers. It's not their fault.
Right.
I just haven't retained anything. So I have my stuff edited for grammar and for content. And there might still be a mistake or two for the really strict grammarians who don't read my stuff. And then I have someone edit for content. Does this make sense? Are you understanding? And then the other thing that I did, which is really important, is I had my covers professionally designed. And I found a freelancer, and she was really great. She gave me, like, the first time she did a cover, maybe 10 or 15 options. And, and she was like, send me a little bit about what the book's about. Send me your website so I can kind of get your vibe. And, just hit it off. So it was worth it to me. And I thought very affordable, but those were the areas that I was going to spend on money. Now, if I had much more money, then the third thing what I would do was spend it in marketing. Yes. And I do have really good SEO for my website, but that's one of the things I'm working on. Like, how can I have market the books better? And so I do podcast interviews. I had my podcast. So different ways of thinking outside the box that are a little more cost effective for a solopreneur.
Oh, yeah, I am with you 100% on all three of those things, because editing, like, I won't pick up a badly edited book, or at least the second one, right? I'll put it down pretty quickly. And so a good editor, first and foremost, even if you hand draw your cover, have a good editor. Like, that is, I don't care. But yes, the book covers also are a major thing. And I did my first ones, and then a year later I had somebody do them more professionally, because I had, they weren't bad. I thought they were pretty good. But
yeah. Well, but I don't have artistic talent. So it just would have been, I did one, like, for a little course that I did, and I was like, oh no, after seeing what they came up with, that I was like, no.
Well, and I like to think that I can use Canva pretty proficiently. Like, I do pretty good at it. And I sent it to several people. I was like, please, tear this apart. Tell me if this is good or not. And they were like, yeah, it's good. But, none of us really knew how big of a difference a cover makes, because I'm not a covered reader. Like, I don't pick up a book and go, I'm going to read the back of it. And if the blurb is badly written, I'm not going to keep reading. So, I didn't know. But then I got them redone, and the number of people who are like, oh, this is a new book. And I'm like, no, it's the same one. But it looks so good. I'm like, thanks. But yeah. And marketing. So what do you do for marketing? Because I'm with you. Like, it's expensive, but you have to do it.
You have to do it. So I have a little bit of help. My brother is an SEO expert. Nice. So I have really great, they get to my site, but one of the things that I have to do is, and it's been a very challenging thing, and I don't sell myself well, but I've had different people write, and I'm like, I'm on the lookout for someone else that can do it, because people are there, but what am I doing wrong that they're not always buying? They sometimes do, but I want to increase that. So like I mentioned, I do podcast interviews. I did the podcast. And so my little commercials in between the podcast would talk about my classes or my books. And then the other thing that I've done is I do public speaking. And anytime I speak, I'm like, can I sell my books? And like the other, during COVID, I had someone on the West Coast, and I was like, do you want to buy some books to go along with the talk? And they did. So they brought 20 books, and they were really great. And I said, look, my markup's like nothing on this. And they're like, we'll pay full price for it. That's okay. So, I was able to sell 20, 24, something like that. But I mean, I was thrilled that I was able to do that. So those are the ways that I try to, in a more roundabout way, I guess, is market. I'm trying to figure out, and I don't know if it's the place, but like LinkedIn. I've mixed, like LinkedIn, I would really like to get more used for more public speaking gigs. And so that's on my thing. Just like different places I can do. Like I'm at my local library. I'm like, do you have a copy of my book? And I'm like, no, but we'll get one because you're local, right? And just thinking, and then someone, one of my listeners said, I went to my library out in Arizona and I asked them to buy a copy of your book, however it does through the library. So, different ways like that. I think that especially for solopreneurs, we don't have the budget of Macmillan. We have to think, and It's a love-hate relationship. I'm on Amazon, right? The reality is, Amazon charges me to print. I print through Amazon. Now if I sell it on my site, it's awesome. I get more of a cut because I can ship directly from Amazon, but they charge me to print. Then they I think Amazon ends up taking 50 or 60%. So, but I'm like, I kind of feel like you have to be on Amazon, right? It's too big to ignore.
I agree. And it's like one of the, you just have to accept it. And I hate that, but I just don't think that right now, because we are broke indie authors, right? We don't have that budget behind us we can't unionize and be like, hey, let's start our own whatever. And so I've had that conversation with so many small, authors that are just like, what do I do? And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Right now, they're the machine, and you have to live with it. If you want that broader exposure, right? Because otherwise you are going to do twice the legwork, which you already are putting in, doing the events. But I agree that you have to do the legwork. You have to go ask the library. You have to send, hey, can I to your local bookstore or wherever?
Yes.
Will you do a signing? Let me come and set up my table or whatever. So yeah, you have to put yourself out there, which I think that fear comes in again, that nobody's going to show up. So you've done it. The next time won't be so bad.
One of the things I'm trying to do, and I don't know what happened. This was years ago. I Googled it and didn't find anything. I'm like, you must have been on crack or something. But what I want to create for my small town is a conference for authors. And I want my brother or someone from his office to speak one day. Like, here's how you can do as a solopreneur, entrepreneur. Here are SEO tips. And then maybe we have someone talking about design, or I have a friend that does social media, and have that. And then, and then it's like day 2 and 3 is like having the public and having different people speak. And so I'm trying to come up with a theme around, because I want it to be for independent authors. And at the time I'm like, where are the conferences for independent authors? And I don't know if I need to bring it down and be more of a niche. I just haven't figured out, but that's on my goal. We just started a friends group at the library, and I'm like, I want to create, and I'm at a small town, so it'd be affordable. Pittsburgh's an hour away. People can fly in from Pittsburgh or drive, and create something that gives people, A, they can learn, and then B, they can have opportunity to sell their books and speak, and then hopefully gain, but make it affordable.
And that's so hard, because you're right. I'm in Alabama, and so there are plenty of indie authors in Alabama, but that we don't have the events. I think the closest one is, was it Nashville maybe? And then they just had one, pretty big one in Denver. But, stuff like that. It's not close at all to anything. Or I think Las Vegas. There's one in Las Vegas.
Okay.
I'm going, that sounds fun, but what am I going to do? I don't have that much money to travel to Las Vegas and pay for the conference and that kind of thing. But yes, I think going to conferences like that would be a huge benefit if you can make that work.
Right. And then, and then it's always nice meeting other authors. Like, you feel you create this community. Like, I'm grateful. And next month, someone started a writers group here that I'm going to go check it out, and hopefully it's good. But it's just, it's just a different beast, and having people that speak the same language helps.
Yes, and I do think, you can't. I talk to my best friend regularly, and we talk about my books, and she just kind of glazes over when I'm like, oh, I did this, and she's like, I don't know what that means, but I'm so happy for you. Thanks, love.
All right.
So, Julie, what projects do you have coming up that you want to share with us? What's your next new big thing?
Well, so I am creating an Etsy store. I obviously think outside the box when it comes to clutter. So I'm in the process of creating some product that are going to help us, again, like looking at all different types to declutter your life, because that's what gets me excited. I am working on a draft, and I'm putting this out there to hold my feet to the fire. So I've written about clutter. It gets me all excited, but I'm working on my personal story, which was a time I was in cult, like CULT. I call Cult Light, which was a women's group. And I let this person have too much influence for me. And when I started to move back from it, I'm like, what? People have been with her 20 years and they're not. And I was like, wow. And so I'm writing that, what I went through with her. And I saw her for a very specific reason. And one of the last things she ever said to me was, you never wanted to do this in the first place. I'm like, that's great after I've spent all this money and time with you. And so that's going to kind of be the lead into the story. I can't publicly say what it's about yet until I do, because it was one of the most heartbreaking things for me. But so I'm telling that story and how I became resilient and how I listened to my own voice after the process. So I'm putting that out there publicly. So people are like, hey, when's that coming out? Right. So I'm in the process of writing. I have about 100 pages, not a ton, but I'm in the process of writing that. So those are the two big projects. And then I have a book I need to edit on end of life organizing, because I think that's very important. Like, what do you want your legacy to be? Do you have a will? What's going to happen to your pets? And so that's kind of where I am with projects that I'm excited about.
Yeah, no, that all sounds fantastic. And like, I do love a good checklist that's really cute. Just going to throw that out there. If you make cute checklists for your
I do in
Etsy
this,
store.
the end of life stuff. I'll checklist going on.
Yes. My husband bought this this notebook, and it says, gosh, what is it? Stuff you need to know for when I kick the bucket or something like that. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that's so great. And he has yet to open it. And I'm like, babe, it's empty. Like, I need to know, because I don't know any of this stuff. Like, what do you want from me? And I'm like, otherwise, we're just going to dig a hole in the backyard.
Right.
What do you want?
I have to tell you, I thought my dad, he was like, okay, here's what I want. I was in North Carolina at the time, and he said, I want to meet with you and your brothers. And then when my mom died, I was like, okay, well, what you want, you obviously. And she's like, oh, your mom didn't want to talk about it. I'm like, hold up.
Yeah.
We had a meeting about this. And he's like, yeah, this is for me. She didn't want to. So when we're grieving, we're having to say, he said, well, we talked about cremation. I think that's what your mom wants. I'm like, well, that's what we're going with.
I mean,
I like, if I'm wrong, but you know what? Come haunt me, because we're here grieving, and you don't want to make those decisions.
Yes.
When you are stressed out and you have enough stuff to do, that's the last thing you want to have to be making decision. I talked to, it's really great. In the past couple of weeks, I've seen two people I haven't seen in 25 years. And so it's been really great. And she talked about how her mother had a brain aneurysm, and they were like, she was in New Orleans at the time and she had to get to Georgia. And they said, you need to get here now. And she said they died within 5 days. She said her mom died in 5 days. But anyway, at one point she went to her mother's house to find this stuff. And her mom's like, no, I don't want to be kept alive, turn off the machines and all that. And luckily she was able to find that. So when the decision came, she's like, hey, this is what my mom wants. So I can be confident in that decision. But, I'm really clear about that. I'm like, turn it off, pull out the plug. I don't want a crappy quality life. And that is something that is so, so important to me. And those are things that people need to think about and put in writing and tell the people that you love.
Yes, because what a great, it's a gift, honestly, to not put them through having to make decisions when all you want to do is remember them. You don't want to have to go through this business-like situation. And so, and we're getting to that point, we aging parents and that kind of thing. I think we still got a few good years left on all of them at the moment, but we are creeping closer to that every day, And so I've learned, and it's so funny because, like I said, we still have both of our parents. I'm so thankful. But when I see how we're dealing with situations, I make a mental note for my child, she will not have to deal with. I don't want to sort through their antiques. Yeah. She's not going to have to sort through mine, stuff like that.
The kids today, I want to tell, well, first of all, I have two thoughts on that since I have decluttered things. Yeah. One, the kids today don't want your stuff.
Nope.
And a lot of those things you think were valuable aren't. Nope. And people don't want antiques anymore. Let me rephrase that. The majority of people do not want antiques.
Right. Oh, yeah. I think my mother-in-law has one table that I told her, because they're like, hey, y'all come over. We're going to have this time. We haven't scheduled it yet. They're like, we're going to just put sticky notes on the bottom of all these things. And I said, there is one table I have wanted for the last 20 years. So that's it. My name goes on that one table because it's an elephant and I collect elephants. There's a reason. It has a meaning. It's one thing.
Yeah.
But anything else, I don't want to go through the attic. I don't want to throw away all this sheet music and papers. Deal with it now. And so I have found dealing with my parents has made me want to declutter even more.
Yeah, because and it's a gift when that's done.
Yes.
Because someone has to do it. And if you're out of town, you're going to have to hire someone, or it's not an easy Not an easy solution sometimes.
Oh, exactly. Oh my goodness. I love how we have run the gamut on like all of the topics and they've all kind of had that thread running through them. That's fantastic. But we are to the point now where I'm no longer the host of the show. You now have control over this show. And so have at it.
Okay, so since we're talking about it, what do you want your third act to be? So I'll share what my third act is going to be. So my first act was blah, blah, blah. Then second act was at 40, starting my own business, starting to play tennis, getting married, all that stuff. So my third act is going to be to create a cat sanctuary and a dog sanctuary. So that's what I want my living legacy to be. You know, I'm in West Virginia, so land's a little less expensive here. I found out a friend is what do you call it, wealth advisor, and she has for a specific county. And I'm like, we're sitting down to talk. How much money can you give me? Right?
Yeah.
I'm like ready to make this happen. So this is what I want to do, is create a lasting living legacy. And I want people to think about that who are listening. You know, to me, it brings in my creativity. I'm going to have to use fundraising skills. I'm going to have to, think of a business plan. And so my plan is to have a house that's nice and livable, and to pay, instead of pay, people don't have to pay a mortgage, right? Let's pay for everything. So you come and take care of the animals. That's your trade-off, and it's for a couple years, and, put in place a board, things to make sure the animals are being taken care of. But for many people, the mortgage is the biggest expense of the month.
Mm-hmm.
So if we create the sanctuary, and if you love animals, it's a win-win-win, right? And so I'm trying to think outside of the box. How can I create this sanctuary, and then how can I continue to make it go? So I want people listening and watching, what's your legacy going to be? So Sharon, do you have any thoughts for you?
Mine right now, like I'm so like, my first act was I have no idea what I want to do with my life. My second act, and I got married really young. I was 20 when we got married.
Wow.
I'm blessed. I still have the same guy. I've known him since we were 13. Like
wow.
we've been through it, right? And
yeah.
so that was my first act. And then, I became a mom, and I gave up any ambition that I really had for myself. And so maybe I'm kind of I know I'm only 40, but I feel like this is the start of where I want to go. And so I want to have multiple successful book series. I want to, because I love writing. I want that to be what, people pick it up and they're like, man, she loved writing. Like, that's what I want,
Yeah.
I want my kid to be comfortable one day where, because I wrote enough happy ever afters, that she doesn't have to work as hard to through life,
Yeah.
like, I don't want her to have to struggle, after I'm gone, and that kind of thing. And so, and I would love for my husband to retire because my books did well. Like, he's taking care of us. It's my turn. I want to do that for him, and he can come home and work our farm by himself.
That's what one of my motivations too is, that I want, and why I'm creating this Etsy store and why I write books, is I want my husband to be able to retire at 60.
Yes.
That is the complete goal, so that we have, doesn't have to be $1 million every month, but that we have our mortgage is paid off, which is our largest expense. So I'm like, after we get the remodeling done and get the house we wanted, I want you to be able to retire. And that, so we have some income coming in, and that's a motivation for me too.
Yes, like, and it's so funny because we almost had that, with COVID, when it came around and he was forced to work from home, and like there wasn't that commute, and it was just so, I loved having him here all the time, even though he was working, but I'd see him at lunch, he'd be home for dinner in 30 seconds, I loved that. And I was like, I want to do this all the time, because that was a good 2.5 years before they were finally like, nope, you have to come back to the office. So yeah.
Now, my husband lucked out. His boss was like, we ended up moving from North Carolina when my mom got sick, and he was really great. And he said, we can move back to West Virginia. But his boss was like, yeah, I don't care. Retire. You can work from home till you retire. So we were very fortunate to have that happen. I know not as many, but it was the same thing. It was COVID. We got to see him. It was great. We each had an office, and it worked out really well.
Loved it. We literally built this room that I'm in now. We built it onto the house because we were like, we both need an office. And so now we have 2 different offices. It's so nice. And I miss him. He's home 2 days a week. He works from home 2 days a week. But I'm just like, one day I'm going to make enough money off my books so that you can work from home or not.
There you go. I love that. I think that's really wonderful.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. What else is on your flip the script?
Well, let's see. I want people to think about how can you balance being creative with clutter, right? Because you talked earlier about, I think that there's a happy medium.
There is.
And I did a little video the other day, and someone was like, okay, this is a great example. Someone, so like, I did a little video, like, that's clutter behind you. And I laughed. So I did a little video. So it's on the opposite thing. And so I have medicinal teas, and then I have the books that I use frequently, and then I keep my lipstick for interviews there, and I have like little spray. Anyway, so it's not, I'm not Instagram worthy, and I tell people if that's not realistic, if you have any sort of life. So then I did a little thing, and I said, I want you to encourage you to think about, is there a difference between clutter and being neat? Right? Because I was like, these are things, I said, this isn't clutter because I use this stuff all the time. Clutter's the stuff that isn't important. This is important to me. So it was just a conversation to get started. And that's a great example of how we talked about earlier. Like, you don't need to be Martha Stewart. You don't need to be Instagram worthy. But what is the balance for you with creativity and clutter?
Well, for me, my desk has to look exactly the same just about every time I sit at it. If there's too much going on, like right now, I have too much going on because May is nuts. It's recording month. Everything gets recorded in May for the next year. And so, I know I'm a glutton for punishment, but yeah, that's why I had 4 interviews yesterday. But anyway, so like I'll scratch stuff down to remind myself that, come the afternoon when I'm not doing an interview, then I need to work on this. And so now I've got all of these loose pieces of things that it's making me nuts, because it's not all on one sheet of paper in my columns and that kind of thing. So, but my desk needs to look pretty much the same every time I sit at it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So I think that's great. So again, for people listening and watching, figure out what the balance is for you, right?
Yes.
I would say, can you think clearly? Is it not causing you stress? Can you find what you need when you need it? Those are some kind of basic rules to go by, right? And that you don't, again, have to be so strict with it, but that we want what's going to support us in being and having our best creative life.
Oh, for sure. And I think I love that. What's the difference between, neatness and, because I can't, it's not going to be 100% like Marie Kondo. Like, it's just not. I love that it should spark joy, but here's the thing. Right now, I can't throw it away because I don't know.
Right.
It's gonna stay.
And the thing is, and again, like we have been doing remodeling. We're taking a break and have more to do. And so my bedroom and bathroom were in my office for like 8 months.
Yes.
It was what it was. I did the best I could. I knew there was an end date in sight. I said, I'll go back to normal, right? So it's just about scheduling time, making sure you do it, and then giving yourself grace.
That is so true. Give yourself grace, because and don't try to rush it. It's a process, because as soon as you get something clean, what happens? Like, you do all the dishes and then somebody uses the cup. Like, that's part of life. That's what happens. So yeah, give yourself grace, because life is messy.
Right. It is.
It happens.
All right. So I have one last question for you. What advice would you tell your younger creative self?
Oh, that writing can be a full-time gig. I took multiple, what are they called? Like, where career tests, where they're like, hey, what should you be when you grow up?
Yeah.
And so I even went through, like, when I was graduating high school, my mom worked at the career center in our state. And so I went and we did like the career assessment or whatever. And every single one of them, it was either be a teacher, be an actor, or be a writer. And I was like, oh, that's funny, because like 1 in a million people are successful at acting and writing. So I guess I'll be a teacher. And I homeschooled our kid. I taught high school.
Wow.
I taught, I did teach, and I love teaching. But when I started writing 3 years ago, oh my gosh, I found what I loved. And so, and I love the business part of it. I love the momentum that builds with every book that I write. And so I think I would tell my younger creative self that, hey, it's okay to even try. Like maybe I wouldn't have been successful then, but I would have found something that I loved a lot sooner.
Yeah. That's great. I would probably say to my younger self, expand what you your definition of being creative. Right? Like to me, podcasting is creative.
Yeah.
Like I'd have to sketch out. I didn't fully write. I'd sketch out episodes, but that takes a lot of amount to be creative. Interviewing is a creative process, right? And so just finding whatever it is for you and celebrating that.
Oh, for sure. One of the men I talked to yesterday, he edits. He does video editing for small businesses, like they do advertisements or documentaries, whatever. And he edits, and I was like, "That is my least favorite part of this job. I don't like editing." And he was like, "Yeah, but somebody's got to do it, and it's good when you actually love it," because he loves that part of the job. And I was like, "We all have that part." And to me, I wouldn't find that creative. I'd find that mind numbing and annoying, but for him, that's his outlet. And I'm like, I love it. Yeah. Yeah. Find your creative and run with it. Like do what you love. Yes. Okay, Julie. So how can listeners connect with you? Website, socials, all of that good stuff.
So if they go to reawakenyourbrilliance.com, they'll find my socials in the top right-hand corner. I've got a newsletter. I don't sell their names, but if they sign up for it, it's free. And I give them 10 free tips to declutter their life right now, give you a take action item to get started. Obviously, we've talked about it. You can find my books on Amazon, but I also sell my books and classes and affirmations on my website.
Oh, that's fantastic. I have one last question, and it is the big question, and it's your exit ticket. Are you ready for the big question?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. Okay. What is one piece of advice or encouragement you want listeners to walk away with if they hear nothing else?
That they are good enough, they are worthy, and they are loved no matter what.
Yes. I love that. Also, No Matter What is the name of my first book. And I think that is something that I go with, like, no matter what. There's always something on the other side. Keep going, no matter what. Like, that's the theme. So I love that.
There you go. That was serendipity.
I'm telling you, it's just good advice. We're both telling you, no matter what.
Yes.
It's there. Julie, thank you so much for being here today and for having this conversation. I think it's one that as creatives, we take for granted sometimes, that decluttering would actually make our life a lot easier.
I would definitely agree. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely.